There seems to be some disagreement in the press notes as to whether this is a Western or not a Western. Where do
The press notes disagree with themselves.
The directors disagree with themselves in the press notes on whether or not it's a Western.
It's not a Western.
Okay, why is it
Well,
not?
because when you use the word Western, it depends what you mean by Western. It sounds like Bill Clinton talking about sex. No? It depends what you mean by Western. If by Western you mean with that word come all the genre expectations and there's a kind of classical narrative they all adhere to, it definitely isn't one. It takes place at that time, and we wear those costumes, there's horses and guns, but it's a unique narrative. I mean, I'm not defying genre, but it's the Miller Brothers story. They told the story of these various different interlocking characters. It doesn't set up or resolve in the ways that every other Western does. There you go. How about that? For a nice, vague, lawyer-like answer.
Well, that works. But your character, you're sort of playing, I guess I gotta say, the bad guy here. Do you look at him as a bad guy, or is he a good guy just misunderstood?
Frankly, if you ever play anybody like a bad guy, the movie's dead anyway. This guy's a fundamentalist preacher who has, by the way, I'm sucking a lozenge, I have no voice, because I've been at Sundance for 3 days screaming over rock music all the time. He is a guy who believes that he has divine revelations from God, and those revelations allow him to start his own cult. They allow him to marry multiple women, including his own daughter. It allows him to kill, rape, do whatever he wants. And for all of these things, he has utter justification and purpose, a sense of purpose. He's never doing it to twirl his invisible moustache at the audience members. And what I love about playing him is, first of all those things, and then that those things are challenged immediately by Ed Harris, who comes and has no respect for my authority. And in town, my authority is supreme, and so my ego is very bruised, and I'm challenged in my relationship with God, and then the voices come again to help me. So there's a journey for me too. I'm not just a force of antagonism.
Well, are the characters ever just forces of antagonism when you're playing villains? Like, come on, Harry Potter, he's a bad guy.
Oh, but he's got a huge journey. Oh my God, Lucius Malfoy. And I disagree with that. There's something very truthful about a racist and a separatist, a eugenicist, a big advocate of apartheid between wizards and muggles. You don't need to look very far to find those contemporary resonances. That's why those stories work. That's why those stories resonate in the caves of Azerbaijan and the skyscrapers of Shanghai. They're British boarding school stories, but there's some essential truth about human nature that you don't have to look too far to find, maybe without broomsticks and without trolls and stuff. But I think that the reason that people like to hate Lucius Malfoy is they recognize that in him. And by the way, during the course of the story, Voldemort arrives. I've been waiting for him. I worship him, and he utterly, he utterly dismisses me and emasculates me. In fact, he snaps my wand. He castrates me essentially in front of people. So I'm crushed and I'm humiliated in front of my wife and kids. So there's a whole big journey there. And good stories never have characters static.
Now, you mentioned the emasculation, and in this movie, your character sort of, his center of masculinity is this mahogany table. Do you have anything like that in your own life?
All my Apple products, yes. I lost my iPad last night. I left it at a bar, and I felt naked, vulnerable. I felt I'd been Lorena Bobbited all night.
And what happened with that?
It came back this morning, or else I would be standing a weeping mess in front of you.
Just came back on its own?
It flew through the window like an owl, yeah.
Now tell me, you mentioned that there sort of are resonances that people get out of stories and characters like this. Do you think
that's the point of storytelling, isn't it? And that's why people have been gathering around fireplaces and, even if you take visual storytelling, painting pictures on the walls of caves forever. That's why you can go to the square in Marrakesh and Jim El Fnat, and there are people still telling stories. And there's no difference from what we do now, however high-tech or 3D it is. We watch stories, and they're very often extraordinary. Shakespeare told stories of kings and places far away. They're only worthwhile, and we're only gripped by them because we recognize some aspect of our own behavior, writ large, maybe.
Well, what do you think the contemporary takeaway in Sweetwater is?
I don't know. That's for every individual person. That's the whole point of it. You tell a story as best you can, and whichever bit resonates with someone is what they take away from it. I was in a play called Angels in America for a year in England, and it was a multi-stranded narrative. And still, 15 years later, the people who write letters and go, "When my sister was dying of cancer, I remembered how your character left his boyfriend," or whatever it is. And other people take entirely different things from it. I think it's a good enough story, and there are enough human nuances in it that depending on where you are in your life and what's going on for you, you will find some connection.
Now, when I asked you earlier about it being a Western, you said, no, it's a Miller Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Having worked with them, what do you think that means? What do you think going forward that's going to mean for their projects?
Well, they have a rather unique and fresh take on all stories and how to write a script and how to run a set, quite frankly, and probably how to run the edit, but I wasn't there. They're untrained and they didn't go to film school, but they trained themselves. And they're a natural talent. They educated themselves, not just in film, but in life. And they train themselves in the language of film and the craft of film. And it means that when you say, the audience will be expecting this to happen here, they go, yeah, we know, we understand it, we don't give a fuck. This is what we think, and they are, because there's two of them, and because they work in harmony so well, they're actually much greater than the sum of their parts. A wave of enthusiasm or passion or conviction from them just knocks over everything in its path. And so I think what it means is they'll continue to sound and be their own flavour. You know, they won't be invisible. You'll watch a film and you go, I bet that's from the Miller Brothers.
Now, for those of us who are still missing Awake, are you going to be getting back into the pilot waters this year?
I probably am. I'm thankfully fielding a few offers at the moment. You know, there's some amazing work going on in American television, and but when you're an actor and you say yes to something, you know, you hope that it's something that will turn into a television series, and then be careful because it might turn into a television series that's on for many years. So I'm trying to be fussy because I like to do good stuff that's entertaining.
For breaking entertainment news and more, follow @HitFix on Twitter or visit hitfix.com.